My advice to anybody who wants to pursue being an author is it's definitely a marathon. It's not a race. And you have to love the craft of writing and really enjoy the process itself of writing because it's a lot of rejection. It's a lot of like things that are beyond your control. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And there's always going to be setbacks. Like maybe you finally find an agent, but then it takes a while to get a book deal, or you get an agent, you get a book deal, but then, the book comes out and it doesn't do as well as anyone was hoping it would do for whatever reason. You really just have to keep at it and be persistent and be ready to run that race, like to keep running because it's not one of those things where you can like, even Stephen King, like he's Stephen King, but he's still writing a book a year. And so, I mean, he probably at this point likes to do it, but it's definitely a hustle. It's a grind. You have to be in it for the love of the craft.
What's up? Welcome back to the Made Different podcast. Today I'm here with the incredible Rachel Harrison. She is the USA Today bestselling author of So Thirsty, Black Sheep, Such Sharp Teeth, Cackle, and The Return, which was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in a first novel. Her short fiction has appeared in Guernica Electric Literature's recommended reading as an Audible original and in her debut story collection, Battles. Her new novel, Play Nice, is out September 9, 2025 from Berkeley. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Me too. First, I want to say I love your books, and my friend Monique, her Instagram is like Mo Books, please. And like she recommended me your books because I told her I wanted to get back into reading. She's like, you need to read Black Sheep. And I've told you this through DMs, but it literally ignited my love for reading once again. So I'm just so grateful for you.
That makes me so happy. I'm so glad. Sometimes it's hard, like when you stop reading for a while to get back into it and figure out what book am I going to pick up that's going to make me excited to read again and not feel like it's homework.
Yeah.
I feel like we go through phases where it feels like, I know I should be doing this, but I'd rather be doing something else. And there's no better feeling than connecting with a book and being like, there's nothing else in the world I'd rather be doing right now than reading this book.
Literally me with your books. I feel like I count them down and it's just, I was like, thank you for this book because it changed my life. And like I said, I grew up reading Goosebumps and just like all these horror books. So when I read Black Sheep, it was so awesome. So I'm so excited to get into all the things with you today. So first thing, I'm going to get into your new book and the return and all that. But I want to ask you, when you're getting ready to launch a book, do you have any rituals that you do?
I definitely have playlists for each of my novels. So it's difficult because by the time you start promoting your book, you haven't touched it in 6 months. Like by the time it's coming out, you're already on to the next thing. So you kind of have to reconnect to the previous books. I will have a playlist that I like listen to when I'm writing, and I'll revisit that in the like weeks before the book comes out to kind of connect with a part of myself, the version of myself who I was when I was writing the book. And then I also will kind of sit down and anticipate questions about the book because I get a little bit nervous and it will just be like word salad if I don't like try and prepare beforehand. So like, people will usually ask, can you give us an overview about what the book is about? And then I'll have like little sound bite and, what inspired you to write the book? And I'll have that one bite. So I do homework. Like I prepare a book report almost.
That's so fun. That's so cool. I feel like it's so easy because I used to be in music and it's so easy to when the actual product comes out, you're like, I wrote that so long ago.
And you're already on to the next thing and you're excited about whatever you're working on. So like when I was promoting So Thirsty, I was excited about Play Nice. Like I was working on Play Nice. And so, but no one else knows about it. So yeah, I think just trying to reconnect with the old version of myself. And then it was really fun with So Thirsty. I got to go on my first big tour. And so I like got to pretend I was Barbie and like plan outfits. For each tour stop. So that's like my new favorite thing to do. Hopefully I'll go back on the road for Play Nice,
and make a Vegas stop.
Girl. I'm obsessed with Vegas. I'd love to come to Vegas.
I have a studio here, so if you need a place to host it, I got you, girl. Yeah. And what's So Thirsty, I read that book, and it's so like, I feel like Naomi and Sloane are so fashion forward. So did you plan your outfits around them?
I have a coat that I call my Naomi coat because it has the faux fur
Mhm.
around the collar and the sleeves. But I was wearing like a lot of red and black and like in my vampire era. So yeah, it's just fun. I think as a writer, I spend, 95% of my year alone in my office in like scrub clothes. So the opportunity that I have to like leave it's easy when you only have to put on makeup 10
Right.
times a year to be like, I'm really going to do it up. I really made the most of my travel time and
Mm.
my book release time. And I think it helps to have something else to focus on because it's really nerve-wracking releasing a book into the world. So if I'm like, well, what am I going to wear? Then I'm not thinking about, are people going to like it? Is it going to
Right.
sell? So finding other ways, productive ways and fun ways to distract yourself.
I'm sure. Especially because, I mean, how long does it take you to write a book?
So the cycle I'm on now, I will kind of come up with a concept in the fall and I'll pitch it to my editor and then I will actually sit down to write the book from January until June. So it'll
Okay.
take me 6 months to get through a draft. I'll send the draft off to my editor and then she'll come back to me and then I'll usually have 6 to 8 weeks to work on developmental edit. I'll send it back and then I will get copy edit the following January. So it's like a year and a half from start
Wow.
to finish.
Wow. And how often are you writing books? Like you said when you released So Thirsty, you were already planning Play Nice. So is it like constant ideas? Do you have a draft of ideas? How does that work?
I have to pitch the idea pretty close to when I sit down to write it because you want to still be excited. And sometimes you get an idea and then if too much time goes by, you're like, actually, that idea is not new and shiny
Mm.
anymore. So we'll usually get an idea in the planning stage and then like sitting down to write. I'm pretty much so I'll break it down for my year next year. I'll be working on copy edits for Play Night probably in January. And then as soon as those are in, because I try not to overlap working on books at the same time
Mm.
because I write close first person, so it's hard for me to get in voices. I will late January, February start writing the draft for what will be book 7. And then we'll turn that draft in June and then a couple weeks to sit
Mm.
and recover. And then I will get into edits. And while I'm editing, I'm usually on the road. I'll be on the road promoting Play Night. So I'm on the book a year track. So I write a book every year, but I'm never working on just one book a year because I will always be working on copy edits or edits for the book from the previous year.
Sounds.
But I don't have a day job. So
So writing's your full time job.
yes, yes.
I love
Mhm.
that. So, for anyone listening that wants to be an author, do you have any advice? Take us back to when you first started. How was that getting signed? Did you get signed right off the bat?
Oh no. I went to college for screenwriting and then I graduated and was working as a production assistant on TV game shows. I spent my 20s working on my craft and practicing writing, shifting from screenwriting to writing prose. And I was working on a lot of short stories. And then I sat down to write a novel and I'd written drafts of novels, but the first novel I wrote that I was like, oh, this actually feels like something was The Return. And that was when I was 28. So it was years of just like working on my craft and until I was able to like get to something that I felt was good enough. And I had kind of a lucky break. I did a Twitter pitch contest to find an agent. I was like getting ready to query and I felt confident in the draft of The Return that I had, but I did a Twitter pitch contest called Pit Dark and that's how I found my agent. And we went out on submission and I landed at Berkeley and that was like a big stroke of luck of just good timing. Everything
Mm.
worked out. My first novel came out during March of 2020, which wasn't the best,
Mm.
but my advice to anybody who wants to pursue being an author is it's definitely a marathon. It's not a race
Mm.
and you have to love the craft of writing and really enjoy the process itself of writing because it's a lot of rejection. It's a lot of like things that are beyond your control. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And there's always going to be setbacks. Like maybe you finally find an agent, but then it takes a while to get a book deal. Or you get
Mm.
an agent, you get a book deal, but then, the book comes out and it doesn't do as well as anyone was hoping it would do for whatever reason. You really just have to keep at it and be persistent and be ready to run that race, like to keep running
Mm.
because it's not one of those things where you can like even Stephen King, like he's Stephen King, but he's still writing a book a year. And so, I mean, he probably at this point likes to do it, but it's definitely a hustle. It's a grind. It's not the kind of, you have to be in it for the love of the craft and not for the like,
The
the
fame
fun
and the
parts
money.
are, yeah, which there's not much of that. The fun parts are few and far between. So
Mm.
a lot of it is just you alone, like doing the work. And so you really have to love the work itself.
And I feel like that's with any real like passion or goal that you may have in life.
Yeah.
Like you have to fall in love with the process of it. And I think that's what you're saying of fall in love with the craft, the passion, the progress of it. Because you don't know what's gonna happen. And for you,
Yeah,
did you
exactly.
always know you wanted to be a writer?
I didn't. I was always like writing. I was always writing stories from the time I was a kid, but I really love film
Mm.
and I like loved I was a little baby ham and like I liked to act and I was a theater kid, but I always thought I would go into film. So I thought I would be I went to, my major was in screenwriting in college, but I wanted to be developmental executive. So get scripts and find scripts and take the script to a producer and say this
Right.
should get made and work in Hollywood. That was my dream for a while. And then it just didn't pan out. And I'm kind of glad because sometimes, you know, the things that you want lead you to the things that make you happy. You don't get the things you want. Can't always get what you want, but you try sometimes. You just might find you get what you need,
Yeah.
as Mick Jagger once said.
Love that. And it's so true. I mean, you're still being in the creative space and your books are phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's so much imagery and story to it. You mentioned The Return, and that book, I think, from all the books from you that I've read, that one was the creepiest, first of all. And second of all, I feel like the message to that hit really deep for me. And you have this beautiful way of combining really deep topics, I feel, in a very horror, like spooky way. How did you figure out that's your thing? That was your niche.
It happened when in the short story, like when I was writing short stories, I wrote a story. I was in a short story workshop at Catapult in New York City, and they don't do workshops anymore, but it's still a publisher, and I think it's still a publisher. Anyway, I wrote a story about two friends from college who drift apart, and one of them survived sexual assault, and she is entering this program where SA survivors get turned. You can choose to become a mermaid, and it was this blending of like trauma that I was like working through and also the supernatural thing element. And when I wrote that story, I was like, oh, it's this. This is where I belong. And it just clicked for me. And from that point on, I wrote a story called Goblin, which ended up in my collection, Bad Dolls, about a weight loss app where you get a tiny physical, like evil goblin who like bites you and smacks food out of your hand. And I was just able to like kind of talk about these things that mattered to me and that like I had lived experience with in a way that was fun for me to write about. Like it wasn't like at times it's painful, but it wasn't so painful that I wasn't motivated to do it. And that's how I kind of found that this is where I belong. And it was years of me writing stuff that like either wasn't supernatural at all or it was very high concept, but didn't have soul to find that I needed both of those to make anything that I write work and to be true to myself. And so I think a lot of it is just like trial and error to find your voice and to find what works for you. And that's kind of like how I came to figure out that combination. And with The Return, it was I like want to write about this true and honest experience I have about drifting apart from my friends and how painful it is and friendship breakups and how come no one talks about it.
Right.
And then also, but what if what if it's like The Shining, but about female friendship?
Totally.
And then bam.
Yeah, no, and it's so cool that hearing your take on that book and like what inspired you to write it, because I feel like I messaged you about this. I don't even know. But when I read it, I lost my dad and my grandpa in a very short period of time. And when I read it, to me, it hit in the sense of sometimes it's not even that they passed away, but it's that letting go process. And sometimes they don't get to rest because we're holding on to this memory of them. And so that book hit me on a deep level that I was not expecting. I started reading it and I was like, I'm going to go into this about female friendships and it's going to be a cool little horror book. And it had me crying and feeling all the emotions. And you are so talented when it comes to that. And I want to shift a little bit into the So Thirsty because same with that one. It's you have this way of storytelling in a fun way that's very deep. And with So Thirsty, I want to ask you, did Naomi and Sloane's friendship, were any of your personal friendships inspired or reflected in them too?
I'm very careful about making sure my characters are not my friends because I don't want anybody to get upset with me. I don't want anyone to be mad at me. But the dynamics of that friendship kind of mirror two relationships in my life. I mean, I say all of my characters are versions of me. So Sloan and Naomi are none of my friends. They're both like Naomi is me on a wild night.
Yeah.
Like me on like a blue moon. I can get crazy like Naomi, but like most of the time I'm more of a Sloan. Like
Mm.
on my most self-deprecating, self-loathing day, I'm Sloan. On my wild, crazy day, I'm Naomi. But the relationship between the two of them, I have a friend who I've known since we were 12, and we've stayed friends all this time. And we used to go to the mall in high school, and very that having a friend that you've known for so long, that was inspired by my friendship with my friend Deanna. And then my best friend Courtney, who is also an author, she wrote a great book called Welcome Home, Caroline Klein. A lot of the back and forth dialogue between Sloan and Naomi, those conversations to me sound like conversations that I have with Courtney. Sometimes I'll be talking to Courtney and we'll be going back and forth, and I'm going to be like, if somebody else listened in on this conversation, they would think it was scripted because we're both writers. We both have very specific sense of humor. And so it was fun to write those conversations, like in particular, like they're in the two, Sloan and Naomi are in a motel. It felt very much like when Courtney and I were in dorm rooms doing each other's hair. So there, like I want it to feel authentic, and I pull on experiences and feelings and emotions and dynamics from my life to help it feel authentic. But at the same time, it's fiction, and I don't
It's not
write for a
regular.
reason. Yeah.
Totally. No, for sure. So, real quick, before you continue listening to this episode, which I know you're enjoying because you're still here, I wanted to do a quick little check in with you and see how you're doing. Because so many times we just go through our day, not even asking ourselves or checking in with ourselves. And that's how a lot of resentment and like burnout and all this nasty little things build up. So I need to take a moment and just check in with yourself. How are you doing today? Like, honestly, I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of journaling. I think it's a key factor that really changed my life, and it is one of the reasons I've manifested so many things in my life. And that is why I created my own prompted journal, which you can find right now on Amazon. It's called Journaled, 222 journal prompts to explore your thoughts and discover yourself. And I'm mentioning this because one, I think journaling is such a massive thing, but two, I think if you're listening to this, you're someone that wants to constantly improve yourself or make yourself be and show up as the best version of you. So yes, this episode is sponsored by myself, by Journaled, and this is just your invitation and reminder to pick up your copy. I will leave the link in the show notes or in the description for you to grab your own copy, and we could continue 2025 journaling together. I think it's super sick. All right, let's get back into the episode. With So Thirsty in particular, I feel like there was such an awesome first person narrative. There was so much dialogue in that book, and it almost read like a novel. I mean, it is a novel, right? I think considered a novel. When you're getting into these characters, do you get into the mindset? Do you eat differently? What is the process like as an author for you writing these stories?
It definitely does feel like getting into character, but I'm not like a method actor. I'm not like, which is lucky. I'm not like
You're not drinking
being like,
blood.
I'm gonna drink blood. Yeah. Or, eating raw meat like
Right.
Julie or anything like that. But I definitely do. That's what I was saying earlier. I try not to work on multiple projects at the same time because I do write close first person. If I were writing so working on So Thirsty, which Sloane is my protagonist, and she's in a very specific place. She's a very specific person. And then Play Nice, my protagonist, is Cleo, and she is 25, and she is kind of an asshole. They're two completely different voices. And so I try not to overlap because when I sit down to write, I want to be able to just lock back into that voice and get really close to it. So I'm not like living in their head all of the time, but I need to be close enough to them to like be able to just click back in. So I'm not like, if there's no overlap. I want all of my characters to feel distinct. I think that like the two closest that I did back to back would be Rory and Vesper, but Rory is generally very caring and considerate of others, even though she can be a little cheeky.
Right.
And Vesper doesn't really give a fuck about any stuff. So it's like it's the difference, but they're both very confident, zest versus going from Annie, who is my protagonist of Cackle, to Rory. Annie is kind of woe is me, and Rory is not like that at all. So in that way, it's easier. But again, it's just harder to. I want to make sure that I have a clean break and that each of my characters feels different. And when I sit down to write, I'm like fully in their voice. I don't want to be like writing a line of dialogue and being like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like Cleo. This sounds like Sloane. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I'm like, there's so many ways to get into someone's head, right? And I was just thinking, do you sit there eating the raw meat? I don't know. I don't know how much you get into.
Not that much, trust me. I will like sometimes burn a candle. Like I'll have a specific scent that like I'm working on. If I'm working on a book, that'll help me get into the headspace and the music. But yeah, luckily for me, I don't need to like completely method. Yeah.
No, awesome. I love Vesper to like that character to the point where I like finished the book. And what was I doing? I was riding in the car, like my boyfriend was driving, and I just randomly go, I just cannot believe they were Satanist. And he looks at me and he goes, huh? And I'm like, and like her dad killed her. And he's, what are you talking about? Sorry, that was a spoiler. But I was just like, it was such a phenomenal book. And she will forever have a part of my heart to the point where I want to name my first daughter Vesper if I ever have children. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, be careful. She might be a handful.
I'm sure. But she's cute. We love that. No, I'm obsessed with your style of writing. And it's so unique. It's so unique. So now your new book, Play Nice, coming out September 9th. Tell us a little bit about that, because there's some Britney Spears inspiration and like Amityville. It's a demon story. Tell us about it.
So yeah, it was inspired by when Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas like split up.
You're speaking my language.
Was trying to like smear Sophie Turner in the news, the bad mom, and watching the immediate backlash that came where people were like, no, we're not accepting this. And thinking about how it was so different than the Tab 35. I grew up in the Perez Hilton, like
he's always on my TikTok. I'm like, dude, I haven't seen you since MySpace days. What the hell?
He's still around. That's crazy. But thinking about what the media did to Britney Spears, about how they just made her seem insane, and the lack of empathy, and how often men can just turn around and try and make a woman seem crazy. And I was thinking a lot about that, and I had this idea for a novel that turned into Play Nice, which is about Cleo. She's the youngest of 3 siblings. She has 2 older sisters. And when they were kids, their parents had like a really awful, messy divorce. And Cleo's mother moved into a house that she claimed was possessed by a demon, that there was a demon living in the house that was torturing them. But the father and the courts determined that she was actually just kind of crazy and there was no demon, and that she was an alcoholic and was abusing the girls. And so she lost custody. The girls became estranged from the mother. Now they all grew up, and Cleo gets a call that her mother has died unexpectedly and finds out that the house, which she thought was sold a long time ago, her mother kept the house, and now it has passed to Cleo and her sisters. Her sisters want nothing to do with the house because they have awful memories there. They were like the mother being abusive. They don't remember anything about the demon. But when Cleo goes to the house and she's an influencer and has seen too many reels and is like, well, what if I remodel the kitchen and then sell the house for money? So she returns to the house for that purpose, and then discovers that maybe there is something creepy about the house. And her mother had written a book, like an Amityville horror style book, like true horror book about the time in the house. But Cleo and her sisters have never read it because they didn't want to revisit that bad period of their life. But now Cleo's, well, what if there's something to it? And so she picks up a copy of the book. And then so there's Play Nice, and then there's the book within the book, the book within the book is called Demon of Edgewood Drive, the true story of a suburban haunting. So you will get Play Nice, and then you will get that book inside of it. And that book was annotated by the mother. So you kind of get little glimpses into the mother's reality. So it's kind of like a Russian doll of stories. And sorry, that was rambly. I haven't perfected my pitch yet.
That is so cool. I'm excited.
It's kind of like Hamlet in the sense that the ghost of the parent comes back, but this time it's through the book within the book. And yes, some fun demon got some of it's a demon story that takes place in a house. So I say it's not a haunted house novel, it's a possessed house
Oh
novel.
my God. I'm
Like it
so
all
excited. I cannot wait to read that. That
Thank
sounds phenomenal. Was it
you.
hard for you to write a book within a book?
What I was worried that it would be tricky to switch back and forth from the
Mm.
different narratives. Like I said, like I write close person, but that part wasn't as challenging as I thought. And I was really grateful because I really wanted to do annotate. I really wanted to do book within a book, and I really wanted to do annotations, like footnote the mother's like scribbling notes in. And I'm very lucky that Berkeley let me do it because it's not the easiest for typesetting and all that kind of
Mm.
like logistics. So that I was really excited about. But it was also, I think the tricky part was what I'm dealing with is I have Cleo's story and then I have Alex's story that she wrote in the book, but then also in the footnote, there's some slipperiness of, well, this didn't exactly happen this way, but I wrote it this way to sell more copies of this book. And so keeping track of the different, like the different storylines and like
Mm.
trying to, I had to know the truth of what happened, but none of the characters had the whole truth. So I think that was tricky.
Wow.
And to just make it like to keep track of, oh, well, Alex is saying this happened here, but
Mm.
what does Cleo remember? And if she doesn't remember, why? Because Cleo was about 7 at the time. So also trying to think back, like, how much do I remember from when I was 7?
Getting the mindset of a 7-year-old also.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
and is it
And trying
really
to,
seven?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, because it's Cleo's perspective now as an adult and she's in
Gotcha.
her 20s. But there's like lines of dialogue from the kids in the book within a book. But yeah, it was like moving parts, but it was really fun. I think when I sat down, I was like, this is kind of ambitious to do a book within a book, but I had a lot of fun writing. And I think the fun part about the book within a book is you have fiction and
Mm.
then you have even more fiction. Like I kind of had more freedom to do like wild stuff, especially because I don't know if you've ever read the Amityville Horror. But that novel is, I mean, it's not a novel. It isn't a novel. They
Right.
claim that the stuff really happened, but it's so bonkers. And like there's lots of exclamation points. It's just like the most wild. You're like, what? What really happened? And so it was fun to, in the book within a book, kind of take it there about being like, there's black sludge coming from the foss
Oh
one
my
night.
God.
Clearly being embellished.
Oh.
That was a little bit fun to actually be able to take it to a wilder place because even within the context of my novel, that novel is crazy. If that
Dude,
makes
that
sense.
sounds so cool. No, that sounds so amazing. I'm so excited. What's the playlist for this? What's the vibe that you have going on?
I've been listening to a lot of gorillas, and there's a character in the novel, Cleo's brother-in-law. His name is Tommy, and he's kind of this, like he wears sweater vests in
Oh
earnest,
my
like he's
God.
kind of a nerd, but he listens to like Slipknot and Korn.
Oh.
Like he listens to a lot of new metal, which I just think is hilarious. But then I was like, started listening to new metal. So I was listening to a lot of new metal, like
Love
when I was listening to like Limp Bizkit. I'm like, who am I? But it's kind of fun.
that is so cool. I would love to see those playlists because that just sounds so cool. Okay, so dream scenario. I want to take it here.
Okay.
One of your books gets picked up by a filmmaker. What book is it, and who is the filmmaker?
I would say The Return, and I would say by Karen Kasama, who did Jennifer's Body.
I love that. Love it. Do you have an actress or actor in mind that you would love to play one of your characters?
No, because I feel like I'm so out of touch, and I feel like all of the actors I would need, I would love Zendaya to be in one of my, because she's just the
Yeah,
best.
she's great.
I like picture Zendaya and Anne Hathaway as Annie and Sophie and Cackle because they did like a jewelry ad together. But for The Return, I don't know. I would love to see some unknown.
Okay, love it.
So just like 4 unknown
That's so
in like this
cool.
cool hotel. Yeah.
The one I really want, and I think it's no surprise to anyone listening, Black Sheep. I need that to be a film so bad.
I will say that one's closer than the rest. That's all I can say.
Well, I'm so excited to see if that happens. And if it does, let me know when those
Yeah.
auditions are because not me, but I know people that I would love to see. Anyways, okay, one of the final questions now. If you could sit with 3 characters of yours and just like go for drinks, who would they be?
Probably Sophie because she's like magic
Mm.
and I feel like she's a good hype woman. Rory because she's very fun. And then trying to think who else. I mean, maybe Vesper because I feel like that would be she's not the most social, but I think it would be interesting. I think the Sophie Vesper dynamic would be very interesting. And then me and Rory could just watch them while we take shots.
That would be so cool. I love that. Oh my God, Rachel, I could sit here and talk to you about all these topics forever. This was so
On a
amazing.
waves, it's so fun.
I love it so much. Thank you for coming on. And please, I don't know who I have to talk to have you come to Vegas for the book signings, but just
You don't have to twist my arm. I'm going to be like, please. Vegas is one of my favorite places in the world. So we're going to make it happen.
So cool. It would be so cool. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. This was so fun. I am so excited for the new book, Play Nice. And yeah, do you have any last minute words or anything you would like to say?
Thank you so much for having me. I love your shirt. And yeah. Anytime.
Amazing. And then all your social media is going to be linked below. It's Rachel Harrison's Ghost on Instagram and TikTok, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
And I'll leave all your books linked. Go ahead and share this episode. Let us know if you've read any of her novels, which one's your favorite. And if you haven't, make sure to pick one up because they are incredible.